Folks, we're just practically back on time, so we must leave here by 4 o'clock. So if you would all come forward, grab a seat, and I don't know about you all, but I think this has been a terrific day, a terrific day. And to Barry, who will be wrapping up briefly at the end, and to his staff and all of the people that worked on this, my hat's off to you. I mean, a wonderful group of speakers, and just lots and lots of good things to think about. And I hope, as I said at the outset, that this will be the shot heard at least around the country, and we can get literally hundreds and hundreds of campuses doing this. I think it would be just terrific. I have a couple of announcements at the end, but I'll hold those. And I think we ought to get into our last panel, and they're going to sit and talk from there, which will, I think, speed things up a little bit. Let me introduce them briefly to you. Lee Farris is a senior organizer on a state tax policy at United for a Fair Economy, whose mission is to raise awareness about the corrosive effects throughout society of concentrated wealth and power. And she'll be kicking things off. She'll be followed by Steve Meacham, who's the organizing coordinator for City Life, Vida Urbana, a bilingual community organization whose mission is to fight for racial, social, and economic justice and gender equality. He'll be followed by Tori Perrell, student Northeastern majoring in international affairs, been very active in the Occupy Boston movement here. Next semester, she goes to Belgrade, where she will do a co-op at the Center for Applied Nonviolent Actions and Strategies. The organization started by young Serbs who were part of the student uprising in the late 1990s against Slobodan Milosevic. Unfortunately, Jimmy is not with us, right? We thought Jimmy Tinkle might have some time to come over and introduce a certain amount of humor to all of this, but he hasn't. And finally, and last but not least, before Barry wraps up, a guy who I knew when he was crawling around on the rug in the governor's office. Seti's dad, Joe, was one of my assistant secretaries of education, and more than that, a brother to me, and came to Northeastern, and we were close colleagues and dear friends for a long time until tragically he passed away. But he's left us with this terrific son of his, who's the mayor of the city of Newton, among other things, and it's great to have you with us. So, Lee, let's begin, and I think you've got some slides to show us as well. Lee Farris, everybody.
Hi, I'm Lee Farris with United for a Fair Economy. And United for a Fair Economy is a national organization based here in Boston, as Michael said, that works to reduce economic inequality and the racial wealth divide. So my job is to talk to you about the super committee today. You've heard many of the speakers, especially in the previous panel, mention it. And I've got 5 minutes to explain the fate of the U.S. government to you with the super committee. So what is the super committee? It's also known as the Joint Select Committee on Deficit Reduction. And all of the spending and taxes for the government of the largest economy in the world, ours, is being decided by 12 people in Congress. All the economic issues that people have talked about today here at the conference all come together in the super committee. The super committee, as Chuck Collins said, was created as part of the phony debt ceiling crisis last August, when Congress did decide already to cut almost $1 trillion in spending. Congress has appointed 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats from the House and Senate to reduce the deficit by at least $1.2 trillion more over 10 years. And our Senator Kerry is one of those 12 people. The deadline for the super committee to come up with a plan is November 23rd. If they come up with a plan, the deadline for Congress to pass the plan with no changes allowed is December 23rd. If no deal passes, the $1.2 trillion will be cut automatically from the budget starting in January 2013. That is supposed to act as a trigger a sort of gun to the head of Congress to force them to act. That January 2013 is the same time that all of the Bush tax cuts will expire unless Congress acts. The automatic cuts will come half from defense and half from domestic programs, except for things like Social Security and Medicare. A lot of the deficit happened because in 2001, Congress passed the Bush tax cuts, which largely went to the wealthy, as you've heard, and then started two very expensive wars that were not paid for at all. And every dollar of spending that Congress now has legislators who support it a lot. So the super committee does have a very tough job. So the question that I want to help you guys wrestle with is, how do we know if the super committee's plan, that if they come up with one, is better than the automatic cuts, which are already very harsh? So these are the United for a Fair Economy principles for a super committee deal. At least half of the total deficit reduction package should come from increased revenues that would improve tax fairness. As you've heard, polls show that the majority of people, including wealthy people, strongly support higher taxes on the wealthy and on corporations. I'm not going to run through the tax proposals. They are very similar to what you've just heard from Chuck Collins. But you can check out the United for a Fair Economy website for more information on these tax proposals. And that website is faireconomy.org. And you can also join our email list there if you would like. The second important principle is at least half of any spending cuts should be made by reducing unnecessary military expenditures. And that's an effort on our part to say we don't, that since we're already going to have military cuts be half of the automatic cuts, they should be half of a deficit deal for the deal to be better or as good as the automatic cuts. There should be no cuts in programs that impact beneficiaries such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, education, and other programs that help middle and low-income families. And also, an important point that has probably been made today is that Social Security has no connection to our current deficit. Lastly, we say that you should reject any proposal that does not meet these principles. While they're very harsh, the automatic cuts are better than a bad deal. And Congress can continue to work on the budget in the coming year if they reject or do not pass a bad deal. I encourage you to develop your own set of principles that you can use to judge a supercommittee deal with. So what's the status of negotiations? Well, none of the supercommittee proposals that have been leaked so far meet these principles. Senator Kerry and other Democrats on the supercommittee are so worried that the economy might be hurt if there is no deal that they do, I think they are vulnerable to agreeing to a bad deal. And Democrats on the supercommittee have already offered $500 billion in cuts in Medicare and Medicaid, even though Republicans still refuse to raise taxes on the wealthy at all. You should be worried and angry. The proposals are also shrinking Social Security benefits by cutting the cost of living adjustment, and they are having deeper cuts to domestic programs that working families count on. And meanwhile, Republicans have proposed combining these painful cuts with further reductions in tax rates for millionaires. So what can you do? This is really the important stuff. You can call Senator Kerry. All next week, there's going to be a national call-in on the supercommittee, and the phone number for that is on the screen. It's 888-907-1485. It's toll-free, and you can keep calling until the supercommittee deadline passes on November 23rd. You can also sign United for a Fair Economy's letter to the supercommittee that's out in the lobby. And if you prefer, you can sign it online at faireconomy.org. Supercommittee, We will be delivering those letters in Washington this week. People of any income level can sign. There's also a good letter that you will find out in the lobby that is focused more on the military cuts, whereas our letter is a little more focused on the tax cuts. Lastly, or not lastly, but close to last, you can demonstrate. There's 2 good demonstrations coming up next week, November 15th, Tuesday at noon at 1 Bowdoin Square near Government Center. Thursday, November 17th, starting at Dewey Square at 4 o'clock. And you will see flyers for both of those demonstrations out in the lobby. One is blue and one is orange. I encourage you to pick them up so that you can bring all of your friends to the demonstrations. And I had an interesting experience at the Social Security rally last week. I grabbed a couple of my interns to come carry the banner as we walked along in support of that rally. And it turned out my interns had never been to a rally before. So if you have never been to a rally before, go check out one of these rallies. They both really liked it. It feels so different to be together with people in person working for a cause than it does to be in a group online. So check it out if you haven't checked it out. Follow the news. If the super committee passes a plan that does not meet your guidelines, call your U.S. representative and your senators and tell them no deal is better than a bad deal. Meanwhile, keep speaking out. You can write letters to the editor. You can share your views with friends and family. Join a group. Work together with people where you work or study or in your place of worship to make your views heard and to figure out actions you can take together. Lastly, if Congress does pass a bad plan, use all of these means to push President Obama to veto it in January. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. I only have one comment. I think you're being less than ambitious on the defense side. For the life of me, I don't understand why we're spending the kind of money we're spending on defense these days, folks. It's 837 American bases all over the world, 11 carrier groups. It's got nothing to do with terrorism. It's got nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. It's a throwback to the Cold War, and it's utterly irrelevant to the challenges we face on the national security side. And only our friend Barney and Ron Paul working together seem to understand that these days. In any event, Chuck, you're on.
Steve. I think my role on the panel here today in this wrap-up session is to talk a little bit about some stories of resistance, in particular resistance from the people who are directly affected by a problem. In the case for City Life, Vita Urbana's current campaign, people who are faced with foreclosure or people who are in buildings, living in buildings after foreclosure, both former owners and tenants. And I'm happy to report that the resistance of those folks is alive and well and growing. You can certainly go get a copy of the latest Boston Magazine article, which you can get in the newsstand for $5, or you can look online. But I have to say the newsstand edition has some really lovely pictures and a spread about the struggle. But it's hard for me to describe the struggle in 5 minutes, so I think I'm going to limit myself to just describing one meeting and what's happening in that meeting that is transforming people from victims into resistors. We have meetings every week at City Life that have over 100 people coming every single week who are faced with foreclosure or living in buildings after foreclosure. That is one of 8, soon to be 9 sites in New England where people are gathering weekly to organize the resistance to foreclosure. In our weekly meetings, we start off the meetings by asking if there are new people there, and there always are. And people stand up shyly and feeling shame, and our folks and folks in the audience are saying, leave your shame at the door, stand up and boldly proclaim where you're at in the foreclosure process and who the bank is that's oppressing you. And people stand up, and in response to questions, they start talking from the floor. We bring over a sword to them, and they hold the sword up high, and the sword is representative of our public protest, whereas the shield is representative of our legal defense, that we call the sword and the shield method, and we actually have a sword and a shield there. So we bring the sword over to them, and they hold it up, and we ask, are you willing to fight to save your home from Bank of America or whoever it is? And they say either meekly or strongly yes, and the entire crowd of 100 yells out, and we'll fight with you. And that is the beginning of an emotional transformation that people are going through from being victims and feeling like alone and desperate and that the bank has all the power or is in the catbird seat to feeling like we actually have a heck of a lot of power. The next thing we do in the meeting is we run a little skit to show what our method is. There's a woman named Carolyn Grant now who the last few weeks has been stepping up and playing the role of a new person and kind of channeling all the questions and frustrations that a new member of the group might have, and is kind of getting out onto the table all the questions that people would have and getting those questions answered. Carolyn's an interesting person in that when she first arrived a year ago, she was somebody who rarely talked up and couldn't hardly speak. She was wanted to be so private about her issues. A month ago, she got arrested in a 3,000-member protest in front of a Bank of America and wrote an article in the Boston Banner newspaper, Why I Got Arrested. That is her transformation from being a silent victim to an organizer. The next thing we do in the meeting is we sum up all kinds of protests that we've been involved in, and we're now, on average, each week involved in about 3 protests a week against banks. Everything from the 3,000 protests against Bank of America to dozens of auction protests every month in front of people's houses when they're getting foreclosed, which is incredibly important for people's morale, to an eviction blockade in Malden, a protest against Wells Fargo and Bevere, this is all in the last month, a protest against Freddie Mac at the Boston Harbor Hotel where the former CEO was speaking, and we took a big puppet called Count Bankula with teeth dripping with blood to the Boston Harbor Hotel, put him on trial in lieu of the CEO of Freddie Mac, found him guilty, believe it or not, and paraded him around the hotel, whereas we paraded around only a few feet from where the CEO of Freddie Mac was speaking. All the curtains started to fall in the glass windows to shield out our protests from the sensitive members who were listening, the BC Executives Club that was listening to him. So we're summing up our actions, we're explaining our method, we're preparing for new actions, and this is happening every single week as more and more people join the struggle. We finish each meeting with some political discussion about why all this is happening, and I can't get into all that here. But at some point in the meeting, every time, we take a moment out to sort of get everybody engaged, and we ask everybody a simple question. And the simple question we ask them is, what do you do when the banks attack? And everybody answers in unison, stand up, fight back. And so I'm going to ask you, what do you do when the banks attack? Stand up, fight back. What do you do when the banks attack? Stand up, fight back. And what do you do when the banks attack? Stand up, fight back. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Tori, I don't know that you can top that, but you're on.
I definitely won't be topping that, but I'd like to speak today about the Occupy movement, and many people today have already spoken about their hope for the Occupy movement and how they have this hope that it will bring change in the future. But what I'm going to speak about is what the Occupy movement has already done. We have already seen a tremendous amount of change in our society in the last 2 months alone, and I hope that some of the things I say can help convince some people and call you all to action. So I have 4 quick points that I'm going to run through, kind of dimensions of success of the Occupy movement. First are the direct successes, as I would call them. These are things that distinguish the Occupy movement as a social movement from a political movement. In my opinion, a social movement is a movement where the people themselves stand up and ask, how can we fix this situation we feel bad about? A political movement, when you're supporting a candidate or a piece of legislation, is asking someone in power, what can you do for me? I have this specific request, and I want you to take care of it. Whereas a social movement, the people take action themselves. So 2 examples I have are the Bank Transfer Day. This was called by several organizations for people to take their money out of big predatory banks and move them to their local credit unions. Between September 29th and November 3rd, $4.5 billion have been moved from large predatory banks to local credit unions. Another thing I would view as a direct success is the $5 debit card fee that Bank of America announced several months ago that it would institute. This policy has been recalled, and now none of the major banks will be instituting such a fee. Second are what I would call the media successes. These are things that the Occupy movement has taken credit for, because the question we've gotten from the beginning is, what do you want to accomplish? And the answer from the beginning has been to start a conversation. And the statistics I'm about to read will, I think, prove that this conversation's been started. In the month of July, the largest media outlets used the word debt 7,583 times, the word unemployment 427 times, and the word unemployed only 75 times. In the 6-day period from October 10th to October 16th, the word unemployed was used 194 times, unemployment was used 506 times, occupy was used 1,578 times, and the word jobs was used 2,838 times. I see that shift from the word debt to the word jobs as showing people talking about solutions. We're not griping on the problems anymore. We're taking action and seeing what we can get done. Third, I would call the dimension political successes. These are indirect consequences of the mass mobilization of the public from the Occupy movement. The first example I would point to is President Obama's decision to speed up his student loan debt relief plan. This plan was supposed to take place in 2013, but several weeks ago, President Obama announced that it would begin this year. I see this as the public forcing our politicians' hand, and they cannot sit idly by. They are being forced to respond to us. The last dimension of success that I would point to is what I call engagement successes. I have seen personally students, people of all ages, become engaged in a movement when they had never even considered doing so before. The Occupy movement loves to say we don't have any leaders, but I would disagree in a way. I would say that every single person who's gotten up off their couch and gotten into the streets, organized a friend, organized a rally, written an op-ed, those are all the leaders. We have galvanized an entire generation of new leaders.
Thanks, Tori, very much. Thank you. Do we have some terrific students here at Northeastern University, or don't we? Terrific. Many years ago, when a guy named Jimmy Carter was president of the United States, we were in the middle of another recession. And Congress passed something called the Local Public Works Program. It was an infrastructure program designed to provide municipalities with the means to get going on lots of projects that they had. And they were shovel-ready. SETI, just the other day, announced a $315 million capital improvement program for Newton, financed in this case by Newton, which will put a lot of people to work and make that community an even better one. And I think it's a model for what we ought to be doing with strong federal support all over the country. Mayor, you're on.
Thank you. It's great to be with you this afternoon. I am really honored to be here with the governor. As one of those kids that was crawling around in the State House, we all were sort of children of Dukakis, if you will, over the years, because he was a governor who demonstrated competence and leadership, effective government that gave people opportunity. You're sorely missed, Governor. We wish this world would have been a different place if you would have won in 1988. Thank you for your leadership. And Barry, thank you for putting this together. Be able to bring the quality of people in this auditorium all day long and to talk about the issues of the day is exactly what we need to be doing. So thank you for your leadership, Barry. You can give him a round of applause. Probably have already. I stand before you today, an Iraq War veteran and the mayor of my hometown. But I'm also my father's son. Many of you knew my dad, Joe Warren. He served as Governor Dukakis' Assistant Secretary of Education, but he is perhaps best known for the work he did right here at this university. And he would love the fact that so many leaders from around Boston and Massachusetts are gathered here at this university to debate our future as a community and as a country. My dad was born in Harlem on what was deemed the worst block in America by CBS News because of its gangs and drug-filled violence. His life was literally saved by a city-funded program, the Police Athletic League. The United States Air Force, which he joined in 1954, allowed him to support his family, sending his full paycheck home every month from Korea. He met my mother, and they began their life together in North Carolina, risking their lives to desegregate lunch counters and movie theaters across the South. It was the GI Bill that helped them buy the home where I live in Newton with my wife Tassie and my 2 children. My father understood the enormous gifts he had been given and the helping hand he had received, and he devoted his life to other young lives, just as he had been saved so many years before. My father's bootstrap story is a familiar one. It literally defines an entire half-century of the American experience. And it is that experience that many are deeply concerned we are on the verge of losing. Of course, these are deeply troubling times. As you have undoubtedly heard throughout this day-long session, unemployment rate is stuck over 9%, 16% if you count those who have given up hope and even finding a job. Income equality is at an all-time high, and wages have stagnated for decades. Millions of homeowners are still underwater. And while some find relief, others will face foreclosure over the months and years ahead. And these are just the facts confronting us. But something deeper is at work. Today, many people are discouraged about the future. They see the American dream that has shaped my life and my father's life fading as a possibility. Vital programs like Head Start and Pell Grants that help lift people out of poverty and make prosperity a possibility are being slashed, while tax breaks are being doled out to the wealthiest individuals and the largest corporations. And more insidious, perhaps, people have lost faith in their government. Hyperpartisanship seems to define our discourse. This titanic clash of ideology paralyzes our representatives and stalemates our political process. Many have come to lack confidence that we have the capacity to solve significant challenges we face. But for me, 2 life-altering experiences, my time in Iraq as a Navy intelligence specialist and my tenure as mayor, have given me reason to be hopeful and committed to fighting for the future. In Iraq, men and women from all different backgrounds and walks of life came together around a common purpose: to serve the country honorably, to protect one another, and preserve our way of life. I believe if we capture this same bond of common purpose to solve our greatest problems and challenges, that we can ever be the great nation we have been. But how do we do this? I believe it is in a moment of extraordinary leadership. The American people don't want no government, as the Tea Partiers would have us believe, but they certainly don't want bad government. They want and need good, effective government with clear vision of the future and leaders capable of making it happen. Leaders capable of solving our long-term fiscal problems in a balanced way at the same time they address our immediate need for growth. Leaders who can encourage innovation and wealth building without shedding the safety net that so many of our residents need. The roadmap in my mind is simple, but the execution will require clarity and focus. When I became mayor of Newton, My residents had lost confidence in local government. Important decisions were getting bogged down in process, and the tone and tenor of our discourse had become poisoned with bickering, blame, and lack of leadership. And while our community was divided, our finances deteriorated, and our infrastructure was neglected. Does this sound familiar? I would never want to equate the city of Newton with the federal government. But leadership looks and acts the same everywhere. Over the past 2 budget cycles, I've done what I said I would do during my campaign for mayor. I put Newton's fiscal house in order by eliminating waste and duplication while actually improving the responsiveness and effectiveness of critical services. I've saved $8 million in the operating budget and signed 3-year labor contracts that bring our expenses in line with revenue at 2.5%, using collective bargaining fairly, saving another $6.5 million. I have invested in new resources where they're needed and could strengthen our community. And we have done this with a new level of transparency, openness, and inclusion, including 24 town hall meetings designed to communicate directly with residents and community leaders. We can do the same at the federal level and everywhere in our country. Though the size and scale of the problems are immensely larger, so is the will, talent, and innovativeness of the American people and the people in this room. To be successful, though, this greatness must be ignited by bold leadership and the desire to put economic security of all Americans ahead of scoring points and winning elections. I call on every politician, every elected leader, every civic activist to commit themselves to finding common ground, to putting our country and community first. To be the leaders we claim to be. Each of us must ask ourselves, am I doing this for the right reasons? To serve my country? To strengthen my community? To meet the needs of my fellow citizens? If we do this, then I believe we can lift our fellow citizens, bolster the middle class in this country, and live up to our full potential as a nation. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. Getting close to time here, but we have a very special treat. Jimmy Tinkle just arrived. He's the guy to my left. And he's kind of left in a wonderful way. So give us a quick 5 minutes of Tinkle.
Thank you, Mr. Dukakis. How about it for the great Mike Dukakis, ladies and gentlemen? How about it for our great panel, ladies and gentlemen? I don't have a lot of time, so let me get right to the point. My name is Jimmy Tinkle. That is my real name. I'm from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I'm running for the presidency of the United States of America. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I've never held elected office. I have absolutely no legislative accomplishments. But I have almost 30 years of comedic insight and commentary that I want to inject into the 2012 campaign, ladies and gentlemen. And unlike some of the other people who are running, I'm not delusional. I understand there's a very good chance I might not win. But with humor, I will raise the spirits and the hopes of the American people. The name of my party, Humor for Humanity. Humor for humanity. Humor in helping. Humor in healing. Humor and hope. Ha, ha, ha. And that's what they chant at my rallies. Ha, ha, ha. So if you hear something this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, that moves your spirit and resonates in your soul, yes, you can. We got to get back to 2 things, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, in this country. Honesty and common sense. Honesty and common sense. What were the mortgage companies thinking? What were these people thinking? Come here. Do you have a job? No, I don't. Come here. Do you have any money in the bank? I really don't. Come here. Do you have any kind of collateral? I do not know what that word means. Okay, let's review. You have no job, you have no money, you don't even know what the word collateral means. Obviously, you're going to need a house. Just sign here. No, you don't need a last name, just sign right here. I mean, it's hard enough to make money in this country legally in business without dishonesty and foolishness in our financial system. Bernie Madoff. There were signs that Bernie Madoff was a liar and a thief and a cheat. One sign was he had a $75 billion company. He had 3 accountants. I'm not an economist, okay? But even I know you need 4 people to play Monopoly. AIG lost billions of dollars. They got bailed out by the taxpayers. And at the end of 2008, the people who did the foolish, dishonest deals got bonus. At the end of 2008, the people who lost the money got bonuses. I'm listening to Rush Limbaugh. He's defending the bonuses. He says, these aren't real bonuses. These are more like commissions. These are more like tips for a waitress. Tips? For a waitress? Let me ask you a question. If you order a steak dinner from a waitress and she loses it, are we supposed to tip her? Have you seen my food? I don't know where it went. No problem. Keep the change. It's hard enough to make money. Delta Airlines, a great company. They lost $6 billion in 2008. Northwest Airlines, another great company. They lost $5 billion in 2009. And get this, in 2010, they merged. What kind of a business plan is that? We lost $6 billion last year. You're kidding me. We lost $5 billion. We should get together. Think of the hole we could dig if we were to join forces. No one would dig a deeper hole than us. We would not compete with China. We would be in China. And I know it's going to be hard for my campaign, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's going to be hard for my campaign, but because the Supreme Court has ruled that money is actually a form of free speech, and the corporations can give as much money as they want to political campaigns. If money is a form of free speech, how much speech does the middle class have? How much speech do the unemployed have? How much speech do the people at Occupy Wall Street and Occupy Boston have? If money is considered a form of free speech, lack of money has got to be considered lack of speech. So I suggest next April 15th, when the federal government wants our tax dollars, I suggest we all write letters to Washington basically saying, listen, we'd love to pay you, but to be perfectly honest, we're speechless. JimmyTingle.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I don't know how it works. I got a tweet 2 days ago from a guy named Josh. He said, I'm Josh, I'm following you. I said, Josh, let me just say this right now. If you're here tonight, Josh, you're creeping me out. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, this great panel.
Unreal. I have to tell you, there's one big difference between the first teach-in at the University of Michigan about the Vietnam War on March 24th, 1965, and today's first big teach-in on the economy on November 13th, 2011, and that is we did not have Jimmy Tingle with us, and therefore we did not have as much fun.
If I am elected, you will have me for eternity.
I've got to thank all of the members of our panel, but there are so many people to thank for this event. This event was planned 11 days ago. And the only way that an event like this could come together with such a magnificent cast of characters is through a phenomenal staff and a phenomenal set of students who we work with and other faculty here at Northeastern University, as well as the wonderful assistance we got from the Boston Globe in publicizing this event. But there are a particular set of people here who really are responsible for what you saw today and this magnificent event. And I want to recognize them. I hope some of them might even come out from back where they're running all the equipment. But John Sarve, over here, Executive Director of the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs, who was really coordinated all of this work here, and along with our students and co-op students and interns Margaret Morgan, Carissa Wang, as well as our administrative assistant Terry Dolan. There were also a group of students who worked. Please come to our session. Please come to our session that is going to begin in 5 minutes in 312L. I'd love to discuss it. What? Let's go. Come to 312L and let's talk about it. I want to also thank a wonderful group. Oh, here we are. Come forward, please. Our wonderful group. And I also want to thank a number of our undergraduate students and others who also were working in the Occupy Boston movement. Zoe Wolf, you saw, Tori Perel, Brian McCormick, Adria Goria, Erica Gerstenberger, and Kat. Thank you all for being here. I want to, however, remind you of 3 things. There are several things that are happening. It turns out that we have something called the Open Classroom. Some of you here attended on Wednesdays. And we had a wonderful speaker, Richard Wilkinson, who has written a magnificent book on the whole question of inequality and how it affects society. At 6 o'clock this evening, in 2 hours, on WGBH, there is a half an hour devoted to Richard Wilkinson. I think I'm on that program as well. It's on WGBH 89.7. Tune in. The second thing is that next Wednesday from 3 to 6 p.m., 1510 Revolution AM radio, 1510 AM, will be broadcasting from Occupy Boston. You might want to tune in. Again, that's 1510 on the AM dial, 3 to 6 p.m. This coming Wednesday. And finally, we had, of course, Paul Guzzi with us. He has a wonderful program. I've been on it many times. It's called This Week in Boston. I think it airs at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings on NECN. Those are 3 things that I think you want to tune into. I also want to let you know that all of you who are here got to see this live. But through wonderful help from the folks in this room, we stream this live worldwide. And we've already heard of people who are listening to it in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, and in other cities. So thank you for being here. And finally, most importantly, I want to thank all of you for being here and joining in this historic occasion as we march forward to reclaim our economy. Thank you very much. Oh, yes. Oh, 1 second. No, don't go. Don't go.
I also conclude with, this is used in organizing circles around the world. It originated in California in the farm fields with Cesar Chavez, and it's a sign of solidarity and a way that we recognize our diversity, but also a way that we recognize that it's a struggle of all of us together as one. It's called the Solidarity Clap. It starts out slow, and then we come together like this as one. Before we start that, I just want to say that if we can sit in this auditorium right now and have this conversation about all of these things that are happening without understanding that our university is a microcosm of the larger society and we have to address problems here too, I think we're fooling ourselves. And as students here, we've been working with workers who are underpaid, exploited, earning poverty wages. And through those times that we've been working with those workers and the students' issues here about trying to get democracy in our university, I've been waiting a very, very, very long time to say this, and then we'll go into the solidarity clap. I'm going to use a people's mic. Mic check. Mic check. Occupy Northeastern. We must spread this conversation. We are each agents of change. We must break down the barriers that the 1% has created between us, because the people united will never be defeated, and we are one.
Thank you. Brian, thanks very much. It worked.
Always a pleasure. I wish we could